Aboriginal women are unique, so they've come from different places. It could be rural areas from a residence or urban areas, and that will affect how they see service providers. To be very aware that they may most likely have a history of service providers that may have harmed them in some way. Many women want to get back in touch with their culture, and so that becomes very important to them that you're willing to be open and integrating their cultural perspectives into what their major challenges and issues are, and just treat it as individuals. When you think of Native women, you're thinking of First Nations women, that there's Métis women out there that have their own issues and struggles of identity and acceptance, and then there's also the Inuit population that a lot of people forget that they are in urban areas as well.
I think they need to recognize that violence isn't okay, no matter what race, what background, and that they should listen to us because we're just as important as everybody else. I'd like for them to recognize us as one of the community, like we're not separated from everybody else, that we need to be included.
Just respect who you're working with. Treat the women that you are working with as individuals. Treat the children that you are working with as individuals. We are the experts, they are the experts. And you have to recognize that you can't treat everybody under one umbrella. That's what the government did. Oh, you're Aboriginal. This is what your culture is about. This is what you have experienced. Listen to their stories.
I expect that they understand the history context. I also expect that they understand what it is like to be an Aboriginal woman living in this society, whether they educate themselves or they have other people educate themselves or get in touch with their own internalized stuff that keeps other women down. I expect them to be kind and gentle and respectful, to treat Aboriginal women the same that they would non-Aboriginal women, and European women in particular.
We have hundreds of years of experience of dealing with things within our families, within our homes, within our communities, that what we need assistance, if we need any assistance, is breaking down those structural barriers that have been built up for hundreds of years, and an understanding that we are the ones that understand them better than anybody, and that we don't need to be told by experts what they are, and that those layers, whether it's government policy, whether it's state institutions like education that perpetuate certain images of Aboriginal women and violence, that those usually aren't coming from us, and that those solutions aren't usually coming from us. So if things aren't community-based and they don't address the larger structural barriers like those institutions, then we're not going to see a change. A lot of that violence is specifically attached to the youth and to the children and to our next generations as a specific strategy, and that if we're going to address either the issue of violence against women or violence against children and state custody and forced adoption, that those issues need to be intimately connected when we talk about solutions.
I think that maybe in order to help Native women, not only Native women but any woman, you should learn their past and maybe their people, but just maybe their past, what happened to them, and find out why they're letting their abusers do this to them. Because a lot of us feel like we don't have a lot of self-worth and we just feel like we don't deserve better, but I know that we do.
I would want a room full of court workers and lawyers and anyone who is to come into the pathway of a Native woman who's been victimized as an adult, to understand that they will not ever know what her life has been like or how young she has been victimized from, and that she experienced a whole life probably of hardships and being told no and being victimized since she was a little child. And that if she's reaching out for help, that might be the first time she's ever reached out for help, and that she needs someone to be supportive of her and tell her yes and show her a way out of the perpetual cycle of abuse and victimization. I think as Indigenous people that we have survived for so long against colonization, racism, and systemic discrimination, and as Native women, our role is to be life bearers. So we have to survive in order to keep our culture going. And I think that there is hope for Native women, because even though they may be going through a lot of abuse, they see that there are other strong Native women out there that are educated, are making their way in life, and are doing good work for the community, and that they might be able to build their lives so that they would be able to do the same and also contribute to the community and strengthen the community as a whole.
Well, they have to develop a relationship, a meaningful relationship, and I believe that's very much based on reconciliation. You know, beyond service providers, the larger society needs to put time into learning about Indigenous history, learning about Canadian history, but that includes an Indigenous voices within that history. Try to understand and empathize with what communities have undergone in the last 300 years, and begin to pressure government and society to have some kind of reconciliation in Canada, and to acknowledge self-determination, to acknowledge Indigenous culture. For service providers, that can mean so many things, from hiring other Indigenous people, not occupying all these positions of power. It could mean having meaningful relationships and consultations in communities where there is dialogue and where there is exchange in terms of sharing experiences and looking at ways of improving services that are being offered. It's about deconstructing that racism, the internalized racism that allows for these stereotypes to exist, and then to challenge them and to name them and to challenge themselves and see themselves in that system.